Your employer doesn't appear on any government payroll. Your mission doesn't appear in any briefing room. And if you die tonight, no flag gets folded. Right now, private military contractors are operating in over 50 countries. Some work for governments, some work for corporations, and a select few, the ones nobody talks about, work for a single man whose name you'll spend the next 2 years trying to forget. You are not a soldier under this arrangement. You are not a mercenary under international law. You are a contractor. And that one word changes absolutely everything. This is the world you're about to enter. And once you're in, the question isn't how dangerous it gets. The question is whether you'll still recognize yourself when it's over. Level 1. The approach. You've been out of the regiment for 8 months. The transition work dried up fast. Security consulting pays fine until it doesn't. The money your service gave you, the discipline, the instinct, the clearance, none of it translates cleanly into a civilian salary. Then a contact reaches out, someone you served alongside in Helmand, someone who knew exactly what you were capable of before you knew how to do anything else. He doesn't text you a job listing, he sends a number, no name attached to it, no company, just a number in one line. They're looking for people like you. The pay is real. Companies like Blackwater, before it became Academy, before it became something else entirely, built their entire workforce this way. Not through job boards, through networks. Former Navy SEALs, Delta Force, SAS, SBS. The best operators who ever lived, now legally available to the highest bidder. You call the number. They don't tell you who they work for on the first call. They never do. Level 2. The vetting 3 meetings, 3 different cities. You never see the same face twice. Each conversation is careful, measured. They ask about your operational history in ways that suggest they already know the answers. They reference specific deployments, specific unit structures, details that weren't in any public record. Someone with clearance ran your background before you walked through the first door. The vetting is psychological as much as it's professional. They aren't looking for the most aggressive candidate. They're looking for the most controllable one. Someone who can operate without oversight. Someone who doesn't require the moral scaffolding that institutional military provides. That's a very specific kind of person. On the 3rd meeting, a lawyer enters the room. He places a document on the table. 40 pages. The language is dense. You notice one phrase appears 6 times in the first 10 pages. Non-disclosure of principal identity. You ask who the principal is. The lawyer smiles and turns to the signature page. You sign. You still don't know who you work for. Level 3, the infrastructure. You fly into Abu Dhabi on a commercial flight. You're met by a driver. He says nothing beyond your name. The facility he takes you to looks from the outside like a logistics company. The kind of anonymous industrial building that exists on the edge of every major city and means nothing to anyone passing by. Inside is something else entirely. Armory, medical unit, intelligence cell, communication suite, and 60 men you've never met who all carry themselves exactly the way you do. The walk, the posture, the way they read every room before they enter it. This is not improvised. This took years to build. Investigations into private military ventures in the Gulf, the kind that ended up in the New York Times and The Intercept, documented exactly this architecture. A holding company in a low-regulation jurisdiction, a licensed security contractor in a Western country for legal cover. Operational shell companies at the field level. Every layer designed to absorb accountability before it reaches the top. You eat dinner with men who don't use their real names. You sleep in a room with no windows. And for the first time since you walked in the door, you feel something close to professional respect. You realize this wasn't assembled, it was engineered. Level 4. First operation. Your first deployment is 11 days. The country you're sent to is described as non-permissive but not hostile. That's a phrase designed to sound procedural. What it means is, the local government doesn't want you here, but they can't stop you being here, and nobody's trying to kill you yet. Your mission brief doesn't mention a government client. It mentions a mining concession, a disputed extraction site. You are there to ensure it remains under the control of a company whose name you don't recognize. Your job is presence. A physical statement that this asset is protected. Across West Africa and parts of the Middle East, this is documented reality. PMC operators functioning as the de facto private armies of resource extraction companies, protecting interests, not nations, securing assets that belong not to any government but to investors on different continents who will never see the land they're claiming. You do your job, nobody dies. You fly home, the operation was clean, professional, and somewhere under all that detachment, a thought arrives quietly and parks itself. You protected a corporation's bottom line in a country that never asked for you. You let the thought sit there for exactly as long as it takes for the payment to hit your account. The deposit arrives the next morning. You stop asking questions. Level 5. Learning the architecture. 6 months in. You're trusted now. A senior operator, everyone calls him Rook, sits with you one night over a drink that neither of you are really tasting and walks you through the actual structure of the organization. There are 3 tiers below the principal. Each tier communicates only with the tier directly below it. Nobody at your level has ever received a direct communication from the top. Instructions arrive through intermediaries, each one adding another layer of insulation between the action and the origin. The man at the top, Rook calls him the principal, always just that, is referred to in operational documents only by a code designation. His instructions have never come in writing. His real identity is protected not just by the ND as you signed, but by a legal architecture specifically designed to ensure that no operator could ever credibly testify to his involvement in anything. His net worth, Rook tells you, is larger than the GDP of the last country you operated in. You sit with that for a moment. A single private individual with more economic mass than a sovereign nation, and a standing private army to match. Power at that level doesn't need a face, it just needs people like you. Level 6. The Gray Operation. The new mission brief includes an intelligence component. You are to surveil the communications of a government minister, Sub-Saharan Africa, a man who has been publicly threatening to renegotiate a major mining agreement, an agreement that, if renegotiated, would cost the principal a significant amount of money and significantly more control. You are not asked to approach him, not asked to threaten him, not asked to touch him in any way. You watch, you record, you report. Clean work, technically speaking. Under the 1989 UN Mercenary Convention, the legal definition of a mercenary is precise enough that most contracted operators are carefully structured to fall outside it. Operations targeting political outcomes rather than direct combat are especially difficult to prosecute internationally, which is exactly why they're used. You conduct the surveillance, you file the report, you don't ask what happens next. 3 weeks later, the minister announces his resignation. A corruption investigation has emerged. The mining agreement remains intact. The principal's asset is secured. You didn't touch him, didn't threaten him, didn't even enter the same building. But you understand, in a way, you can't unfeel what your report was used for. The minister loses everything 3 weeks later. You never find out exactly why. Level 7. Ghost Tier. You're handed a new phone, new identity documents, a new name. Your old call sign has been retired. You are told this is a promotion. The tone of the man delivering the message suggests you should be grateful. From this point forward, you don't report to the operations cell. There is no team, no shared briefing, no debrief afterward. You receive a message through an encrypted one-way channel. You act on it. You go dark. If something goes wrong, if you are compromised, captured, or killed, the company that employs you will have no record of your name that survives a legal audit. Intelligence agencies call this configuration a singleton asset, a solo operative with no lateral connections that can be traced back to the originating party. It appears in declassified material, in memoirs of former intelligence officers, in the documented architecture of high-end corporate espionage. The structure exists because it works. You are, by every technical definition, the most capable and the most untouchable operative in the organization. You are also the most expendable. A ghost has no rank, no record, no rights. The problem with being a ghost is that ghosts don't have rights. Level 8. The cost. You complete a mission you cannot explain to anyone, not because it's classified, because you genuinely don't fully understand whose interests you served. The brief was specific, the outcome was clean, but the full picture, who benefited, who was damaged, what chain of consequences you set in motion, is information that exists 2 tiers above you and will never come down. You're in a hotel room in a city you can't reference in any report that won't exist. You're wealthy. You're highly trained. You're completely alone in a way that has no civilian equivalent, not just geographically, but structurally. The unit cohesion that military service provides, the national identity that gives violence meaning, the rules of engagement that tell you what your limits are, none of it is here. Military psychologists who have studied veteran PMC operators specifically note this profile. The moral injury that comes not from combat but from operating without any accountability structure at all. You think about the flag, the one that doesn't get folded. You've been in this for 2 years. You've made more money than you would have seen in a decade of legitimate service. And tonight, sitting in a room that doesn't officially contain you, running a mission that officially isn't happening, you ask yourself the question that's been building since level 1. What exactly did you serve? You made a billionaire's problem disappear. You just can't remember whose side you were on. You are the most capable, most resourced, most untouchable version of yourself you have ever been. You operate in places governments pretend don't exist. You solve problems that official channels can't officially acknowledge. You are protected by legal architecture so precise and so deep that no court in any jurisdiction has a clear path to where you actually stand. And you are completely, structurally, permanently alone. Somewhere tonight, someone exactly like you, same background, same skills, same financial pressure, is sitting across a table from a lawyer. A 40-page document is in front of them. The phrase non-disclosure of principal identity appears 6 times. They're about to sign, just like you did.